Good evening. My name is Pat Meschino. I'm a journalist and a board member of TropicalFete, a nonprofit Caribbean cultural organization based in Brooklyn, New York. Today, July 1st, is observed as International Reggae Day, a global celebration of reggae music. International Reggae Day was founded by Andrea Davis in 1994, so we want to big up Andrea for her efforts in establishing this global celebration of reggae music. And our guests tonight are two pillars in reggae music. Individually, they and collectively, they have done so much in various sectors of the music business to advance Jamaican music internationally. And they've come together to write a book called Reggae My Life Is, which is the story of Copeland Forbes, who you see pictured here in the red shirt, and it's as told to Clyde McKenzie, who is with us, but we are not able to visually see him, but we will hear his voice nice and clear throughout the interview. So I would like to just provide a brief introduction of each of these distinguished gentlemen. Copeland Forbes is one of the most important figures to emerge on the Jamaican music scene over the past 60 years. He has worked with the best talent Jamaica has to offer in the roles of artist manager, tour manager, road manager, confidant, and team member to such legendary figures as Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, Bunny Wailer, Jimmy Cliff, Black Uhuru, Dennis Brown, Gregory Isaacs, Luciano, and so many others. Copeland has amassed an awesome body of knowledge on the history and workings of the music industry, which has placed him at the disposal of those who want to learn about music and the business of music. He's a most sought after speaker at music symposia, and his fabulous recall of events has been a source of amazement and entertainment. Forbes now adds author to the many titles he has embraced with the release of Reggae My Life Is, which has chronicles his journey from the tenements of Kingston to arenas teeming with fans screaming at the top of their lungs for artists whose careers he handles. Copeland has not only managed artists and musicians, but he's rubbed shoulders with the likes of Don King, Richard Branson, Al Sharpton, and Mark Zuckerberg. He has had a front row seat in some of the most important moments in the annals of popular music. Reggae My Life Is tells some amusing stories of Copeland's experience on the road with the aim of providing useful lessons for those who are making a living out of the music business or those who plan to do so. And he's been recognized with countless awards over the years for his dedication and contributions to the international growth of reggae. And in 2017, he was conferred with the Order of Distinction by the government of Jamaica for his outstanding service to the entertainment industry. Copeland Forbes, welcome. It's a pleasure to see you.
Wow, thanks for having me. I
Pleasure.
didn't know when that intro would end, but
Well,
it
that's
has
not
to end somewhere.
that's not even a scintilla of all that you've done, but that's just kind of giving the highlights. So for people who may not be familiar with you, that they just get an overview of some of the amazing work you have done and all that you've contributed to Jamaican music over the decades. So welcome. And our second guest, as I said, we can't see him, but he is here with us. That is Clyde McKenzie. And just a brief reading about Clyde. Let me just find this here. He he is the director of Magnificent Ideas Limited, a media content developer. He's also a director of Caribbean Global Network, operators of Jamaica-based radio station Bridge 99 FM. That's a news station in Jamaica. He is the founding general manager of the very successful all reggae radio station Irie FM, that way back in 1990, which has consistently polled as the number one radio station on the island. He was the host of Musically Speaking on that station. For 6 years, Mackenzie was a judge on the popular Jamaican television show Rising Stars, which gave birth to the careers of such popular singers as Romaine Virgo and Christopher Martin. He has served as creative director, producer, production consultant for such events as the Reggae Academy Awards, as well as the concerts Ghetto Splash, Reggae Bash, and Summer Sizzle. And he has consulted extensively with public and private sectors organizations across the Caribbean and in South America. He has served in an advisory capacity on cultural matters for the Caribbean Regional Negotiating Machinery during CARIFORUM, EU negotiations of the EPA, during which a cultural protocol allowing greater access of Caribbean cultural workers to Europe was signed. And like
As we celebrate
Copeland,
International Reggae Day, we remember
Clyde was also recognized with the Order of Distinction by the Jamaican government in 2017. And Clyde, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here as well. And I just want to say that Reggae My Life Is will be the first title published by Down Sound Books, a division of Down Sound Entertainment, founded by Joseph Bogdanovich, who is the owner of Reggae Sumfest, and himself was doing quite a bit with reggae music in Jamaica. So, gentlemen, again, welcome to TropicalFete and our July 1st International Reggae Day celebration.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pat.
Pleasure to be with you. Okay, well, I wanted to begin by asking, of course, Copeland, this is your story as told to Clyde, and to just get a little bit about your background apart from the music. I know you were raised in West Kingston, Jonestown to Trenchtown, and had your schooling there. So just briefly, a brief sketch of your early days of your life. And as a child growing up, I mean, right there in the cradle of where all the music began in Jamaica, when you first became aware of music within that surrounding.
Well, first I must say it's a great experience and a great journey. And as I can reflect and go back to the days of the latter part of the 50s, when I just joined the Boy Scouts, right, at Little All Saints School at Lower West Street. And Jackie Jackson, who is the leader of Toots and the Maytals, he was a member of the Boy Scout troop with me, and we both started taking music lessons across the street at a school named Corbett's Music School. So we all started learning the keyboards. But after a few lessons, I thought it was too hard to remember C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and all that stuff. So I didn't bother to go back, and Jackie stuck with it, you know, and he became one of the most sought of musicians and bass player till now. He's still active in the music business, directing the Maytals with Toots, right? Now, my love for music came via my Boy Scout days, because my scoutmaster, his name was Robert Blackman, and he was popularly known as Sir B. You know, he played the organ at the Moravian Church, and he taught music. So that's where I actually got my first lessons in music. He taught me to play the harmonica, and taught me some keyboard lessons and things. So I idolized him from that young days. Now, I was surrounded with talents from living in Jonestown, where I was born, which wasn't far from All Saints School and Chitola Park School. Now, at my school, there were so many future artists there. I can tell you, Bunny Wailer, Marcia Griffiths, Slim Smith, the entire Techniques, Freddie McKay, Ducky Simpson, all came out of Chitola Park School. Some went on to All Saints, and some went on to Kingston Senior, Carl Dawkins, the Heptones, Desmond Decker, and we could go on and on. There were so many artists in our school growing up. And then later on in the years now, right, after we branched in different direction, I moved from Jonestown into Trenchtown, well, Ghostown first, part of Trenchtown, which is the worst part, you know. And then it was one day coming up from Spanish Town Road, I'm passing this street, 2nd Street, and I heard some singing. So I decided to stop. And when I went inside and I looked, I saw a whole bunch of people singing, and I saw about 4 or 5 people, and I knew one of the faces. One of the faces was Neville Livingston, because we know him in school as Neville. I saw Neville singing, and I said, "Wait, Neville, you're singing?" So yeah, man. And they didn't have no name yet. They were trying to call themselves the Juveniles, and some at one point the Teenagers. But that's where the Wailers actually start from. They were singing, rehearsing, cooking porridge, everything. So every night I would stop there and sit there and listen to them and realize that my schoolmate Neville is now singing, and that was something for me. Later on, I heard Feel Like Jumping playing on the radio, and I heard that was Lynette, right? Lynette, which is Marcia, another schoolmate. So, my schoolmates are now branching off in different directions, and everybody's singing now. So I was just surrounded and embedded in music in Jonestown and in Trenchtown. Bagger Walker, who used to play in Studio One band, he was living 1 block away from me when I live at Greenwich Street in Trenchtown. Tabby from the Mighty Diamonds, he was just up the road on Greenwich Street, living at about 8, 9 years of age, before he even was a Boy Scout and before he started singing, and Gladstone Anderson and all these, Stranger Cole were all up at Sunlight Street along with Gussie, who's now a top producer, hanging out. So I was surrounded with lots of talents and lots of influence for the music industry. But my Boy Scout sojourn was the one that really I should attribute everything to, because that's where it all started, and I got all the opportunities to mix and mingle and to associate with all the celebrities, Her Royal Highness Princess Margaret, when she came to Jamaica to open the Independence. I was her official card opener. His Imperial Majesty, when he came to Jamaica in 1966, I was selected again to travel with him as his official cardio opener. The Duke of Edinburgh, when he came here in 1966 to open the National Arena and the Commonwealth Game, I was his official cardio opener. The Queen and the Queen Mother. So the Boy Scout gave me the opportunity to go both in music and in social life, mingling with all the tops and the celebrities and the opportunities that I gained throughout my journey.
Wonderful. So this is Jamaica's 60th year of independence. It's also your 60th anniversary in the music business. So
yes,
tell me a bit, and Clyde could please also chime in on this, like how you and Clyde went about the process of condensing 60 years of experiences and adventures and mishaps and amazing stories, and from the content of the book, life-threatening experiences, like so much of what you experienced in music all around the world. How did you go through the process of condensing that down into the 300 pages that are Reggae, My Life Is?
Clyde started that one. That's something you should be well versed in,
Well, it started with a discussion maybe 20 odd years ago, when Copeland came to my office. At the time, I was managing artists such as Beanie Man and so on, Tonto Metro and Devante. And I think Copeland wanted to book some of these artists to go to Japan or somewhere near there. And the discussion came up. And, Copeland is always with a story at the ready, and, having heard these stories, I said to him, Copeland, I think it might be a good idea for you to write a book. But I think there's a little bit of divergence in the story, because one of my recollection is that there was somebody who said to Copeland before that if he needed someone to write his memoirs, he should have spoken to me. That's what I remember. But also I remember the discussion that we had at my office, which included another person from the music industry, Howard McIntosh, who's a schoolmate of mine at St. George's, and So what really happened was that the discussion started there. The process of putting it together was on and off one, and I mean, for 20 years, very little happened. And then about 2 years ago, I think COVID really helped in spurring this along.
Mhm.
And we were talking as to what we should do in terms of approaching a publisher and finding someone who would be interested in the venture. We're thinking about self-publishing and all different kinds of arrangements. And then it dawned on me. I said, but you know what? I'm going to interest Joe Bogdanovich in this project, and Joe is always the kind of guy who is game for new things. He's very enterprising, very brave, and he is passionate about Jamaican culture. And he realizing, because he had knowledge of Copeland and his wide experience in the business, and also his storytelling prowess, and so when I pitched it to Joe, Joe liked the idea, and I convinced him. I said, this is going to be one of the most fabulous books ever on the Jamaican music, or on music in general. And we started really in earnest in 2020. you know in fact, it was when I was really collecting the material from Copeland, and he was sending them over, voice notes, some typed, and things like that. It was at the same time we were doing the virtual Reggae Sumfest. So I was caught doing that. I mean, helping with that, and also doing the writing with Copeland for this book. But what we did was, because I knew all of the stories, or most of the stories, I would say to Copeland, I want you to tell me this story about Dennis Brown, or I want you to tell me the story about Gregory Isaacs. And then I said, just lock yourself in that frame of mind. And then I gave him some titles as to what I thought the chapters should be called. And then he went, on a kind of stream of consciousness kind of approach. So, he would just be telling the story. So, but this would be, in an oral fashion. So, there would be repetition, there would be all different kinds of things, sometimes extraneous material that would come in. So then the issue was putting this now in a literary form. And so that took some doing, because we structured the thing. These were great stories, but they were in an oral tradition, and we basically converted that in the literary form. And I mean, that is really it. I mean, with the enormous support. I mean, we had support from our respective wives. I mean, uh, Copeland's wife Juanita and my wife Maxine, they were very, very helpful in terms of getting the manuscript together. They did a lot of typing. My two of my kids, my two youngest kids, they were involved too. They helped as much as they could. And then we had Maxine McDonough, who came in and started working with us on the editing of the material. And that was, another important development, because what it did was, I mean, the story was all over the place in terms of chapters. And then we started to sequence them chronologically so that people would be able to follow in a logical fashion. And then that's the book. We found Maria. I don't want to call her name or last name because I might bite my tongue. She's
Right.
Greek. She's Greek, but she we sent. I mean, she did Miss Pat's book, the
Yes.
design for Miss Pat's book. So we
Yeah.
went for Maria because we saw how good she was, and she did the design for the book, and I think she did a great job with that. And here we are. Reggae My Life is.
Yeah. Great. Great. And today, Clyde, you just mentioned Dennis Brown, and of course, today is July 1st, marks 23 years since Dennis Brown passed away. And Copeland, I know you work so closely with Dennis, and you have numerous stories about him in the book. And, you know, sadly, most of it involves his erratic behavior and, you know, how risky it was for promoters to book him, to plan a tour, because you just weren't sure. Like, you know, you might even see him board a plane to a destination, but that didn't necessarily mean he was going to show up at that destination. And just many stories like that. But there was a really touching passage or two in there about his close relationship with Bob Marley, and how you know, Dennis was scheduled to do a show at the Beacon Theater in New York, and Bob knew about that, and so he came over. He said he would come on stage and do a couple of tours, and interestingly, he was preparing for his show at Madison Square Garden
Right.
with the Commodores, and we know how historic that was, you know, being his last tour before he died the next year. But he was preparing for that show, and he said, "No, I'll come over and I'll do a couple of songs over there." And but Dennis never showed up for the show, and Bob was sitting outside the whole time in a limo, and you know, and you said if you knew Bob was out there, like, I mean, the crowd obviously would have loved that if Bob got on stage. But you know, but then Dennis did come to New York. You brought him to the radio station, Ken Williams Show, which is another huge name in New York reggae that has to be called out for all he has done here and beyond here. But in New York radio, he is one of the pioneers who did so much. So bringing Dennis to his show, to his radio show, so people would know that, yes, Dennis is in town. And then Bob hearing Dennis on the radio and going over to the radio station and apologizing on Dennis's behalf for what happened at the Beacon. I mean, this is just amazing. Like, so I would love for you to just, you know, something we would never know as the outside, but what could you tell us about that really close relationship between them, and obviously the admiration that Bob had for Dennis's music?
You know, it's such an interesting piece of the picture, because I remember everything step by step, you know, and it was so dramatic at some times, because Bob was, as you said, was in New York preparing for his show with the Commodores, and he heard that Dennis is going to be doing a show for his best friend, called Bob and Ken Williams are very, very close, you know. So he said to me to tell Lloyd Parks to rehearse Rat Race and Who the Cap Fit, because he's going to come over and do a surprise appearance, because he loved Dennis. And then Dennis never showed up. Bob was outside in the limo. I didn't even know until, you know, I was the only one inside there, because Ken Williams went to the airport to pick him up. But when Ken called and said the plane is empty and there's no Dennis Brown, and it's a Labor Day weekend when people from all over is in New York, that the Beacon Theater is sold out completely, somebody has to tell the audience what's going on. And then I remember we sat there, show was supposed to start at 8 o'clock, at about 9:35. The guy who runs the theater came backstage and said, "Fellas, why don't you guys start the show? What are you waiting on?" I said, "Sir, we can't start the show." He said, "Why?" I said, "The headliner is in London." The guy said, "Jesus Christ, we are sitting on a bomb." And he put his hand on his head like this. "Don't say anything to the audience. Don't do nothing until I alert the police, the ambulance, and the fire department." Because 3 years prior to that, the same promoter had a show and somebody fired a gun inside the theater. So the guy got flashback, you know, about it, you know. And that was one of the incidents. Bob felt so bad about the whole thing. Now, when we finally found Dennis and brought him over the day before, we had to keep everybody a whole week for the following week for the show on the Friday. And Bob came over, and as you said, he apologized to the audience on behalf of Dennis. But Dennis was so special to him, you know, because one of his producer, Alex Satkin, you know, would always tell me that when they are in Nassau working together, Bob is always playing a Dennis Brown cassette, you know, in the studio while they're mixing a Bob Marley tune, you know. So Dennis was one of his favorite acts, you know. And I've known Dennis, again, from he's about 9-year-old, because he was a Cub Scout at Central Brand School while I was a Boy Scout. So I know him before he actually been in the Scout movement, the singing fraternity. So it was it was like a family thing, because I've known him from such a young age. We go to parade together, camping together. So seeing him in the music business was just like another continuation, like why, Marcy and Bunny Whale and everybody was continuing. So even when I was around Derek Arriet, and Derek Arriet recorded a very nice album with him that has on Silhouette, one of his biggest songs, Silhouette, we always have that great memory. And I always remind people, because I saw something today posted that, Dennis grew up and then he was called Crown Prince. I said, no, he was called the Boy Wonder first before becoming the Crown Prince. He was Boy Wonder for a long time. When he's singing at Carib Theater, he couldn't reach the mic, and he sings Solomon, and when he reached that little part, girl, leave soul alone, cause I'm a little man in this town, and the place would mash up. But it was a great association with him. And yes, a nice artist, one that always smiling. I can never remember a bad moment with Dennis. I've never heard him say anything bad about anybody. Very loved, but working with him is like, I don't know what to say. You love him, you take a chance and hope for the best, so to speak. Like when I see him board a plane and I wave goodbye and the plane door closed to go to England. And when I call England, they don't see me. I want them couldn't step off in mid-air, You have to be wondering, where is he? And then when he does anything, the minute he starts that smile, my brother, Ababa John, it don't make sense to quarrel anymore. You just have to just love him and thing. And today is such a special day, because it's the day when he passed. And I will never forget this particular day, International Reggae Day, because I was on tour in Europe at the time. And our bus broke down just before we went through that 21-mile tunnel in Switzerland. And I went to use the phone to call my agent to tell him about the bus. And the first thing he said to me, did you hear the news? I said, what? About Dennis? He said, no. He said, Dennis just passed. I mean, we froze. We didn't know what to do. We forget about that the bus broke down. And we just sit outside on the ground because we couldn't fathom the idea that Dennis Brown was not with us anymore in the flesh. So he's a lovable person, sweet person, but I had so many stories and heartaches, that as much as I get the heartaches, is the more I get to love him. But there comes a point you have to face the reality, I mean, it is a good act, but you're taking a big chance. I remember when I decided to put him on the tour with Peter Tosh, the Mama Africa tour, and Peter warned me,
Yes.
So that this man don't show up one thing. I said, don't worry, everything gonna be fine. Everything gonna be fine. The first show, he came when he had 5 minutes left on stage. He showed up at the venue. Whatever the problem was, and he said it, same thing. The next show, he just wasn't there, and I got a tongue lashing from Peter about it, Eventually, we brought him back to pick up on the West Coast because he had some problems with his management. And that's where the big problem was. So he had to get rid of his management. And then I, myself, and Janet Davison took over the management and started to steer him in the right direction. But, one story after another, one incident after another. And at some point, you have to just face the reality, and just say, listen, there has to be an end to all of this drama, so to speak. But we were still great friends, even though I had stopped managing my booking for gigs here and there. I had him on most of my Reggae Superfest tours, despite what he is and what he was. He was a great artist and a big draw. We can't take that away from him,
Right.
One of the most popular. Yes, Crown Prince, but if there was a Crown King, he could wear that cap too.
Right, exactly. And you tell in the book, I won't go into the whole thing, let people read that, but you talk about A&M Records, and finding out that he wasn't really signed to it initially, that it was through a Joe Gibbs deal, and
Exactly.
then getting the release from that contract and how Herb Alpert, one of the founders of A&M, how much he loved Dennis. He just loved Dennis and wanted to do what he could to help him. And then the challenges with the recording session supposed to be for the album and the work just not being up to the level that was acceptable to them. All these things. I mean, there are just so many stories. But, I know there were always rumors about drug use, the crack, cocaine. You don't mention any of that in the book related to Dennis.
Suppose I
But
tell you something.
mhm,
You just said something very important. You said I don't mention anything about that where Dennis is concerned. If I tell you something, I don't know if the world is going to believe it. I have heard about his habit.
mhm,
I have seen result, but I've never seen him taking it.
okay.
That's such a great difference, you know. I've
Yes, it
never
is.
actually seen him taking it. I see results from that kind of habit and so on, and I've experienced a lot of things, but I've never actually seen him taking it. But
Mhm,
I've had enough sources to believe that there was an affiliation where it's concerned, and it's just a pity, because
it is.
I, there was a rumor that he had one lungs or something like that. I mean, so he wasn't, a perfect person from inside. And smoking can really affect that. And especially if you're connected to substances, so to speak. You know, but it's just a pity. That it had to go that way. And
Mhm,
one thing I always said to any artist I work with who are associated with that, I tell them that I will never be a contributory factor, right, to get that stuff for you, because I've had artists who are dealt with that and asked me if you know anybody who have it, and I said no, and they respect my view, right, and you know, Peter Tosh, I worked with him for years. Yes, everybody knows Peter Tosh smoke his spliff, his marijuana. That is not a secret,
right.
and thing. But any other stuff, and people ask me about it all the time, because they said, you work with almost all the artists who have some association with drugs and things. How did you manage to overcome them and to deal with the situation? It was a heavy challenge, but I have to, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I have to lift my hat to myself that I was able to deal with it, cope with it, and artists that are, some of them who were very hooked on it. I remember I carried a certain DJ to the Virgin Island, and oh my God, I had to even start iron out the man clothes myself to get him. He was lying in the bed watching TV and would not budge. I ironed his clothes, everything. I took him down to the venue. Everybody was there waiting. He did 2 songs and he handed the mic and gave to this DJ guy named Ghost to sing 2 songs. I thought he was going to the bathroom. When I looked, he went back to the hotel. You know, I had to drive back to the hotel to bring him back, and he would never come back. And I had to face all of these consequences. So it's a very serious challenge when you have to deal with artists who are on the substance or deal, associated with that kind of thing. And I just wish it never had to be in the midst,
Yes.
of these artists' career, And that's what I tell you something, a lot of artists who are not on it now, at some point in their career, tried it. Now they tell me they tried it and they realize it's not for them, and they just move to the upper direction and thing.
I
Um,
think I think if um you say we are discreet about how we tell the story, the aim was not to dish on anyone or to gossip about anyone. Part of the approach was to provide lessons, life lessons that those who are coming after these pioneering figures are able to extract valuable examples and lessons from these people. So it wasn't a case of exposing somebody that they were a drug abuser or something like that. I
Mhm,
mean, I think in many instances, people can read between the lines. But I think it was important that we handle much of these matters in a very discreet way, so that because the intention is not to embarrass anyone, whether in life or death, but at the same time to be as truthful and to be as faithful to the facts as one can be. So that's a balancing act where you're going to make sure that you are telling the truth, but you make sure that you tell it with empathy, with discretion, so that you are not stepping on people and walking all over them, or trying to subject them to ridicule,
mhm,
because that's not the intention. The intention is to provide people with the experience of a particular individual who got a chance to see quite a lot, and for that person to share so that some of the mistakes that were made will not be made. I mean, because there are many lessons. How do you negotiate deals? What are the things you must look for when you're entering into agreement with a producer? Sometimes the producer might not tell you everything. He might have a deal with another company, or he has a record deal, and you're just a subsidiary. You have to know all of these things, how tours are done, and how smart people are able to siphon off money off of the tours. I mean, these are the lessons that I think uh, are provided in this book. When you see stories about spouse and the misbehavior of these individuals on tour, it's not to embarrass these people,
Right.
but to provide a cautionary tale that if an artist does not manage his domestic affairs and allows it to interfere with his um, career and his professional maneuverings, then it can have dire consequences. So it's not really to subject anyone to ridicule, or to make people look stupid. It is really to provide stories, historically accurate stories, so that people can know the background to many of the things that we saw happening in the Jamaican music scene. And also because you must remember that Jamaica has a outsized kind of influence on modern popular culture. So, I mean, there are many artists who are not reggae acts who are referred to in the book, because they had interaction with our reggae acts, or Copeland had interactions with them. So the thing is, it is more designed to be didactic, to really show people the pitfalls, in the business, whether it be a matter of making sure that your business are in order, so that when you should pass, you don't leave a legacy of distress for your family. It's really that.
And something else that the book does, to pick up on your point, Clyde, is it also, um, there are many artists who, over the course of the past however many decades, have each decade there seems to be one or two that are tipped to be the next, whatever, the next big thing in the music. And through Copeland's experience, either as manager, road manager, various capacities, his inside view as to why this might not have manifested, I think is just brings such invaluable lessons. And oftentimes it's infighting, it's ego, it's just,
Self-inflicted wounds, yes,
and
because
it's so interesting to see these examples like over the decades. And I mean, one of the stories that I found just so fascinating was the story of Black Uhuru, Michael Rose, Ducky Simpson, Puma Jones, and Sly and Robbie. And what, that the amount of attention, Chris Blackwell, they were with Island Records. Chris Blackwell loved them. He's putting a lot of money into them, promotion, everything that they wanted to make things easier on the road and what they had to do. And, needless to say, like that, those albums by that configuration of Black Uhuru got a lot of attention beyond just the reggae market. I mean, that was a point in my life as a teenager. I became very interested in music journalism, and I remember reading reviews of Black Uhuru albums in like Rolling Stone and in rock magazines, in addition to reggae, whatever reggae publications there were at the time. But they just had this tremendous impact, like across the board, something that we'd love to see more reggae acts be able to have. But Copeland, you give such important details as to how that relationship that those 5 people, like why it just didn't work out. And I would love for you to just kind of tell, the listeners about that, what kind of happened, the inner workings of Black Yehudi.
Well, without giving away the entire book, as Copeland is going to do.
No, I'm just gonna do it in a nutshell. My association and journey with Black Uhuru is one of the most memorable association I will never ever forget. And Sly can tell you, because it started in 1981 after Sly and Robbie left Peter Tosh, and we went over to the UK, and they started the first store. I had all this time off before Peter Tosh's next US store, so I was the road manager on their first store, and we sold out everywhere. And then Chris loved the group so much, and Denise was one of them that was put on top of the project, she and Suzette. And our next tour there was touring with Kool and the Gang. You know what it is to be touring with Kool and the Gang when they were the hottest R&B group with Ladies Night, Celebration, and all these hit songs. Wow. And we are the opening act for them in Europe. And every night, by the time they come down to the venue, they never get a chance to see us. So one night we were in Sweden and they had a night off, and they booked us to a little small gig. And they decided to just come and watch the show. And they sat down and watched the show. And JT and Kool came to me and said, man, Copeland, that reggae thing, man, is in my head, I can't believe that 4 or 5 guys on stage sound like 12 people on stage. Where you guys got this sound? This reggae thing is in my head. We got to do some reggae. And would you believe it, right? They Black Uhuru influenced Kool and the Gang, that they went back to America and recorded a song named Ooh La La La, Reggae Dancing. Right. And that song became one of their top songs on the chart. And I looked at Black Uhuru, I said, to see how much great influence you have. You influence a big group like Kool and the Gang to do a reggae influence song that reached #1. You guys can still do it too. So it was a great experience. In Japan, we had people like Herbie Hancock, who was just on the package, Gil Scott Evans, we're touring with them. I mean, the group is opening for the Rolling Stones, touring with the Police. Not even Bob Marley got that kind of start. So Black Uhuru got one of the fastest start out of the block. And I knew it because Chris loved the group. I remember when Anthem album came out, they was having little problems, and they get a monthly retainer from Ireland, whether they're working or not. And I think around that time, they were probably the only group is getting that. No big record company is going to do that. They don't business about your personal life, but Chris had more passion for artists that he loved so much. He didn't want them to go and to do any other thing on the outskirts to jeopardize their career. So they were getting monthly retainers, as they live along, so they can live without have to do anything, because dub plate and all that crap that everybody have to do here and there sometimes to put a little money in the pocket, right, to the detriment of your career. So things like that. And I remember when the album was coming out, that album came out in 3 different jackets, Chris wanted to make sure that was the album that's going to rocket them up. And when they recorded Solidarity, which was done by Little Bandant, and never forget the Christmas period when it was done, and Dennis came down, and that single had to go on the album. And when we had that meeting over at Colin Leslie's house to sort out the problems and all the arguments, and it was going nowhere, Chris just opened up his briefcase, man, and take out 3 envelopes with each person's name on it. All the back months of retainer that was there. Boom, everybody take it and gone, and we went out on the tour. Now, the problem is that I have always said it, that when wives or girlfriends get involved in the business, it always take a twist here and there.
I don't think it's just wives or girlfriends, it's spouses.
Yes, spouses, so to speak. I don't want to say wives or girlfriends. Spouses get involved. Because I can tell you, musical youth, the Frederick Waite, who most of them are his kids, who was in my scout troop too. He told me that was one of the things that created the problems, in that group that led to them being disbanded. Because when their spouses get involved and mothers and fathers get involved, it creates another problem. And I think that played a great role in Black Uhuru because.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Copeland.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
played a great role in what our Black Hero ended, which I felt so bad, because we were touring. I mean, we were doing everything right that year. Everything was going right, except for the personalized problem and wife involvement. I remember we were doing 3 gigs in Hawaii before going on to Japan. So everybody asked me if they can bring the other half because we're going to spend 1 whole week there,
Um,
you know. Instead of coming back to Jamaica, the promoter said he put us up till we were ready to go to Japan. So everybody brought in the other half. And I tell you, man, one day we were going to the show. Normally, when we're going to the show and we're in the bus, everybody giving joke and feel happy. Man, I'm sitting beside him, wife, everybody, you're nobody talking to nobody. If like it's a graveyard, I have to get up on the bus and take the mic and say, listen, man, it's show we're going to, just be happy. You know.
I
It
think
ended so bad because they had a break, about an 8 or 9 days break between the tour, and I decided to let everybody come home and get some rest and replenish because we have so many shows to do. Even Kings of Cooper Super Jam, the December we had, and then I was surprised. I'm at home, and Puma came to the house and said to me, she just lived down at Michael Rose's house. He was living just down the hill from me. I was living in Forest Hills, and he was in Meadowbrook Estate. And she said she just went down there, and Michael's wife tell her that Michael is not coming back in the group. Black Hero is a thing of the past. I thought I was listening to the craziness. So I decided to go down there myself. And when I went down there, she don't even look around and talk to me. She
I
talked to me
think
through the window.
Copeland is going to.
Eh?
No, but the thing is, with these stories, one of the things is that there are some common themes which run through them, and one of them is that we were not as businesslike as we should be. We were not as abreast of the business of music as we should be. So you found artists were overpricing themselves. Artists did not understand some of the things about tour support. Artists just didn't understand about punctuality. Artists thought that management and promoters owed them a living. Artists didn't respect um, the idea that sometimes when your fans come out there and they pay money to see you, that's a privilege, because they took it for granted that, these people, I mean, they just have to come because I'm great. And I think those are the kinds of things that you want to watch for and to prevent, in the future from occurring, because yes, there were so many of those tales, where people just have the wrong idea. I mean, people believe that they are to be paid when they go on promotional gigs. Managers who had that kind of mindset, and I think what really happened is that these are valuable lessons that artists in the future and currently can learn from.
For sure. Sure. And I wanted to highlight something that's written in the book about Bunny Wailer, who, of course, you mentioned that you've known from your school days, but you write he was the youngest, smallest, most formally educated, and arguably the most vocally gifted of the Wailers trio. But Bunny was also the most problematic of the vocal trio. While I greatly respect his musical talents, I am of the view that his personality played a major role in his failing to have a greater impact on modern popular music culture. I believe he made enemies of promoters, which did not only do damage to his iconic status, but had a lasting negative impact on how Jamaican and reggae acts have been perceived. Now, obviously, that's a very bold declaration to make. So, as much of, again, everything you say, you back up with details in the book. But as in this platform, as much as you would like to share with us about why you've come to that conclusion to make such a statement.
Well, I have experienced so much with him. You know, I've worked with him individually, right? In many occasions. I can tell you this, I've never been paid for my work done. Never receive a dime. Most of the time, it's the promoter have to give me and pay me. People will ask me why you keep doing it. If I didn't do it, I wouldn't have a story to tell, right? And I love the music, and then it's somebody I've been around from school days, and I just kept doing it and carrying on and going on same way. Yes, he's the more formally educated of all of them, but I don't think he utilized that what he learned in school within his business, because he has his own way of doing things. He has his own idea. He used to come to me every time he has an idea. He comes to my house and sit down and talk about it, you know. And he comes with some ideas, crazy ones sometimes, you know. I don't know where he gets them from. You know, like when he decided that he's going to take over Rainbow Gardens in Arpachurch. I didn't know what is Rainbow Gardens until I found out that it was Skateland, you know. And he came up with an idea that no artists don't have to tour anymore, because he's going to build a big dome where they can record their live shows and we stream it around the world. And he had the maths work out on a piece of paper, you know, $30 per pop, you know, this, that, and how much money can be made from it. You know, another thing is Reggae Slam Dunk. You know, what was this Reggae Slam Dunk, right? Yes, Patrick Ewing loves him a lot, plays his record a lot. Patrick Ewing is retiring, and Patrick Ewing sent him an invitation to come to the retirement party. He brought a paper to my house now and sit down to show me that he's going to put on something in the state named Reggae Slam Dunk, and have Patrick to get the Admiral, Michael Jordan, Charles Bartlett, and all these people to come and play a game before a concert. And then he's going to stream it around the world. He had the match work out 30,000 times $40, how much money can make, and we don't have to leave it to go anywhere. These kind of ideas used to come up around and things like that. So he talented person, but I think his ego and his whole personality held him back in many ways. Promoters were scared to do business with him, right? I remember one time we were taking him to Hawaii, and I realized I started to secure my commission, and it become an argument. I told the promoter, I'm out. And the promoter called me and said, if you're out, I can't do it, and I've invested too much money. And he decided to pay me. Master Jacobs is the same thing again. I booked him at the festival again, and I couldn't get paid, you know.
Bonnie, I
mean, he is, I don't want to say the word, but
the thing is,
what? You saying something?
I think the thing is, again, Pat, what I think is being done as far as the analysis regarding Bunny Wailer is concerned is not to deride him, not to belittle him. It is just, I think, again, an effort to put his life in context. Like all other artists, Bunny was a flawed person, and yes, it might have had a negative impact on his career. And I think some of the things that that I really glean from the Bunny Wailer story is that, you know, errors were made in terms of his understanding of the business. Maybe there were issues in terms of his recalcitrance. He was stubborn, and he was, I mean, some would say because he was very principled. You know, there is that analysis that he was a very principled man. He was inflexible. He was really committed to whatever he believed in, and as a result, he did not veer from what he really wanted or believed in, and so, you know, there is that flip side of the story, but then there is the historical thing of all that happened with the Wailers post his involvement with Island Records and so on. So there are many interesting stories that, you know, it's not to put Bunny Wailer in a bad light, I would think, but it is more designed to put him in context and to really position him historically.
But look, listen, even the story of the Electric Boogie.
You know,
I tell that story in the book straight out. You know, I'm not going to hide anything.
No, but we can't tell all the stories.
No, I'm not going to tell all the story. No, but as for the topic, I'm just saying the Electric Boogie story is something that the world needs to know, right? And I'm going to tell it straight from the beginning, right to the end, right, so people can get a full understanding and know exactly how the whole thing went. You know, to see how many versions were done, right, and how he went and recorded one by himself behind the back and don't tell you nothing and all kinds of stuff. It's in the book, step by step, and I can prove everything that I said in the book about the Electric Boogie story has to be told in the right and proper way. I sang on the one that people are listening to now. It's electric. Myself, my son, and Marcia's nephew, Danny Minter, who's now Sidela's husband, we all do that part. It's electric on it. I saw some stories about it, but the book will talk about that, you know. But you know, it's somebody that I grew up with from school days. He was like my right hand in school. You know, he was the only person who used to ride a bicycle, come to school, you know. And them days riding a bicycle, not fixed bicycle, you know, rich bicycle, good bicycle with carriers in the front and back and the bag hanging over it. And every day I used to get me like a 10 shilling or a 5 shilling. One time he give me a pound, man, you know what I mean? And I said, what? You know, because his parents were well off, you know, and he was probably the richest youth coming to school, you know, and he's my close confidant. So we grew up together. Like my father and his father was like, what do you call it? A pat and pat cover, so to speak, you know. So it was a pleasure to really work with him in the business. But when I realized that, you know, it was just a one-sided affair, and I said, you know, I'm still going to continue to do it. I booked him for many shows. I took care of a lot of his business, so many things, you know, and I've never been paid 1 cent. Even when he decided to do his first solo show in 1982, right? I had a wireless mic for Dennis Brown, and Maya and Dennis Thompson can attest to that. And he saw me with the wireless mic, and he took the wireless mic and said he wants to use it for the show. That might cost $3,000 US. All I get was £500, and I will get the rest. And until this very day, I don't get it yet, right? Things like those I had to go through. But yet still, I mean, it's no joke, you know. It's no joke, you know. I don't know what was it. I saw his band members go through some things one time out in California. It was unbelievable, you know, where they were packing up to go home, you know, because they were just sent up there and no direction, and they have 3 days to sit down before the show, you know, and then when they finally do the show and they're ready to go home, you know, them don't get paid at night, and them come to my room. I said, it's not me deal with the money, it's him, you know, right? You know, there are so many things that come up, and I don't know why he kind of take that attitude. But you know something, I think it's two things him love in him life, you know. And then when you say the book,
no. I mean, he's not here to defend himself.
Yeah, but I'm not telling like everybody associated know exactly what I'm saying, you know. And I had to tell it. I couldn't keep it in no longer, you know. At some point, these things has to come out, you know. And he hurt him own self too, you know. Hurt him own self with decisions he made, you know, for his own career, right, which backfired on him many times, you know. And even when I was managing Peter, and him came and just stopped the movements of Peter going up to go and do some Whalers Back Together Again project, which never turned out. You know, never turned out good and all that kind of stuff till him and Peter went at war, you know. I mean, Peter come pick me up one day with a machete in the car.
Copeland, you know I mean? Remember the book is to come. You have to save some for the book.
Yeah, it's all in the book, but I have to talk a little of some of the things them so people can know what it is. Like you said, the book is not to put down anybody, it's to tell the truth about a lot of things, my experience in it. Because it's my experience and it's not nobody else's experience. It's me experience it, so I can talk about it. I can write about it. you know, and I'm glad I was able to experience all the different facets of the business, because it helped to mold me into who I am today, you know. And after 60 years, I can tell you, I can stand up and defend any era of the business because I'm knowledgeable enough. Because I was given the opportunity working with some of the best. Don Taylor taught me a lot.
Yes.
Right? Don Taylor, no matter what people may say and what I may say, he taught me a lot. I learned a lot from him. And Danny Sims, oh my gosh, I knew how to, he knew how to save, so keep, once he has your back, he know how to take care of things, you know. So being around people like Danny Sims and Don Taylor, the two Dons, them, you know, I learned so much. I know to pick out the good things here and there. And those are the things that helped mold me. And then I learned a lot about the business from way back in the 60s, because I saw some of the contracts them that Danny had, you know, Cayman Music within the Whalers and the publishing. I was able to have access to see these things. That's why when I sit back and I hear people talk this and say that and say this, I can talk because I experienced it. I saw it myself. I was there, you know. I mean, I was there at Madison Square Garden, you know, when Bob Marley Commodore show. I saw everything that happened. I saw what happened to Wire. Wire didn't even play the last show. A lot of people don't even know that. After the Madison Square Garden, that was the end. Wire never played a note again. It was Ian played the last show down in Pittsburgh because of what happened at Madison Square Garden when he turned up late. So I was able to see a lot of things being so close to them. And Bunny's experience is something I learned a lot from, you know. And I just wish for somebody with the kind of knowledge and experience and wisdom that he had, I wish he would have used it much more better and wisely, and in an unselfish way, and it would have better himself and better everybody. But he thinks out of the box, and he has his own way of how he does things. And in the book, we'll tell you the real reason why I'm quit the group, you know, because people keep saying that the group mash up. The group no mash up. The thing about it, him left first.
But keep that
right,
story
in 73, right? And then Peter left and Wire left. So I was left with Bob and the Barrett brothers. So, you know, I don't know if you want to mash up, but it's they quit the group. When you quit the group and you leave, that's the backbone. You have 6 people right and 3 gone, left 3. You have to carry on the work, you know, and you carry on the work to do what you signed to do. You know what I mean? And, you know, he must just face through that. He created and started the breaking up of the group. And breaking up because it never break up in an amicable way where people sit down and all shares are going to go, like what we talked about earlier on. You have a company named Copeland Records, which is registered, which you should have do all your deals through, so to speak. But then you do it individually because they all signed individually and signed under the name of Bob Marley and the Wailers, you know. So, you know, all this myth that I read about all the time on social media, people write what they think. And I just wish they would have known the truth and the true facts of what happened and what led to people leaving. And he himself told me, and I have it both audio and visual, 2 main reasons, which I'm not going to say here. It's in the book, why he left the group. You see what I mean? 2 main reasons. Joe Higgs had to come in and substitute for him on the US leg of Catch a Fire tour. You see, and that's when I joined up with them over there. So, you know, I can talk from experience, you know, and what I see, what I know. And even though I wasn't in the UK when the Catch a Fire tour, I was able to speak to Bob and Peter to get a full understanding, right, of what really went down. Even the name Bob Marley and the Wailers. If you listen to an interview that Bob did with Never Willoughby, right, you can hear when they never ask him about that. Him say, boy, I never want to tell no one to call I that, you know, but them just call I that. I don't know what that means. Peter, when Roger Stephen interviewed him and Roger show him the label, that's the Wailing Soul, and it have Bob Marley and the Wailers on it, right? And he said, but see it here, your own label have the name on it where you have control of how it get there. All him say, well, that's when the effort start. Nobody wants to take the responsibility for certain things, but then it pitch it out here and there. So the truth has got to be told in the right way so people can learn. And as Clive said, we're not ditching on any particular person or putting down a person. We're just setting the record straight. So the young ones who are coming up don't have to make the same mistakes that some of these legends have made. Because almost all the legends, they make mistakes, you know. But you can't help it because they didn't know, they didn't understand. You know, most of them signed with a company and they then realize that them signed with the Jamaican outfit, and it's a Jamaican outfit signed with the overseas company, and they don't know. They just think so. They signed with A&M and they signed with this label and that label. and so on. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned from it. And as I say, it's not putting down on one person. It may look so, the longer I work with somebody, is the more stories I have to tell about them, right? Because I spend more time. And there was one artist I spent about 15 years with, that if I was to talk about the journey of that man, that is about 6 documentary, and plenty volumes of book, so to speak. But it's just to show the errors that some of these artists make, and to make sure that the young ones coming up avoid going down that route. Don't go down that road, because here is a big name one that suffer the consequences because of that. And as Clyde said, when some of them want to be paid for their own promotion, that it don't go like that. So it's just lessons learned, and we want to just set the record straight and be on the right track so we can educate, illuminate, and eradicate. Mm-hmm. Eradicate the negative, so to speak. So the book is very interesting, and I'm happy about it, and I should tell you that, we're doing a lot of promotion around the world. We're doing Rotterdam on August 21st. We have put together a Reggae My Life. Reggae My Life is showcase head by Sly Dunbar and the Revolutionaries, which is going to go with the package wherever we have in the book launch, So it's a serious situation. It's not a joke thing, So we just want to get the message out in the right and proper way. And everybody in that book, in that band, there's a chapter in there in the book about them, which makes it so really appealing. And that's why I came up with this idea of putting back the Revolutionaries together with the Revolutionaries, a big band, called Dougie and all these people inside. Answer calling had a bad back. That's why you don't see him inside. Let me straighten that part up. People have been asking, where's Answer Colin? But he was in it until he had a bad back, and he said he don't think he can do the traveling. So I have to apologize for him. But we're going to go around and promote the book in the best possible way, and so people can understand. And remember, in that book, there's a fascinating story about them, especially when China discovered that great guitarist in South Africa. And not going to call his name now, but the book will have it, and people are going to be surprised when they realize that that guy was discovered, right, by one of our own musicians, Earl China Smith, in Cape Town.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. And I know for this, the touring, or the in support of the book with the Revolutionaries, I know you had planned to have the Mighty Diamonds as part of the package, but so sadly we lost 2 of the 3 diamonds. We lost Tabby.
Yes, you were there when we talked about it at the Pegasus, and the Mighty Diamonds was going to be there to represent the Channel 1 era of my presentation, and in 1 week it was all wiped out. Just a pity, so we just had to just the band is gonna do some of the songs from the Channel 1 era, and some of the Taxi production songs, and the rhythms, them, even some of Dennis Brown that Sly and Robbie produced, so the people are gonna get 75 minutes of non-stop music, rhythm, dub-wise and otherwise, by the Sly Dunbar and the Revolutionaries. China Smith, Bob Lawal, Lloyd Parks, Peter Gill, O'Keel, and Dean Fraser. I mean,
wonderful.
Yeah.
Before we conclude, I just have to ask you about one artist that you write about so thoughtfully and write quite a bit about, probably more than anyone in the book. And that, of course, is Peter Tosh, who you had such a close relationship with for many years. And I mean, you toured the world with him. You went to Africa to see a bush doctor with him. You went to meetings in New York with we'll save that for the book, because some of the people that were involved in these meetings, and his issues with the Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger in particular. I mean, just so many things. But something that I was really struck by were the stories about his girlfriend Marlene, the woman who was with him right to the end, like when he was killed at his home in Kingston. But I'm just going to read a quick passage where you say that you share with us many events where her behavior, it's beyond just a spouse on the road causing trouble. I mean, after a point, you read some of these events and you say there's something much more serious here going on with this woman. And then you conclude all of that by saying and There are many who have criticized Peter Tosh for seeming to be too tolerant of Marlene's bellicose demeanor. The feeling was that Peter should have either have been able to control Marlene or abandon her. Yet I'm like to believe that Peter might have been well ahead of his time and had recognized that Marlene might have been suffering from a mental illness. And I just wondered if Peter shared anything with you related to that, if this is just your observation, having been firsthand witness to some of these outbursts, some of these incidents. There, I don't want to give away too much, but just some things that it's, it's beyond just acting out. It's beyond a really bad day or being a very moody person, and whatever it is, I hope that, we know a lot more about these things in 2022 than we did in 1979 and 1985. So I hope, she's doing better.
I must say that it was a journey and a great experience for me, because I knew her in 1982 when we did that co-headline tour with Jimmy Cliff and Peter Tosh, right? And that's when I, nice person and everything. But when I saw the tables turn was when we were supposed to do, Danny Sims was able to get us on this, it's not the Billboard Award, it's the other one, its name, not the Billboard Award, another award show. He was able to get us on. And we were prepared. Yes, the music awards. We were prepared to go there. And then when he came and picked me up at the airport, I went up to New York, straighten out everything, and come down for us to get ready to fly out to go and do the American Music Award. Yeah, right. And he said to me, boy, I can't leave. And I said, why? So, boy, my woman, not well. I said, why I'm to her? Boy, something wrong with her. I said, what? And he connected him. Said, when you see it, you will know. So on the way from the airport, we stopped by our house, And when we pull up at the gate, she was talking to me as if I was 3 miles away at the level of the voice, I'm say, see them, tell them, my brother, and I didn't know what the hell was happening. But because of her situation, Peter lost out on something that he wasn't able to get to go and do the American Music Award. That was the greatest opportunity for reggae music, because those times reggae music wasn't getting aired on these big award shows, So to get on the American Music Award in 1983 was a feat that we couldn't. I had to call Donald Kins in Chicago and say, stop, don't leave. Call Fully, don't leave. What happened? Boy, he's not coming again. And the worst part of it, he said he has to take her to the doctor, and him not leaving till he carry her to the doctor. Where's the doctor? Danny seems to find a doctor quick, right? I said, it's not that kind of doctor. He said, what doctor? A bush doctor. And him drive down to Westmoreland until to find out that the bush doctor is on vacation in Florida, So we just didn't get to do the American Music Award, and we lost out, and then we started to see so many different changes going on, which in the book, and I'm going to talk about it with the car, being smashed up and all that kind of stuff. And, it just went from one to the other. And, even in the book, and I wrote about when we were going to Swaziland, and we were going through Zimbabwe, that he almost got the point. Clyde?
Yeah. No. I'm just saying that one of the things you will find is that the book is not judgmental, or that's not the tone of the book, because the quote you used, Pat, is really typical of the kind of approach that we take, because there's a lot of ambiguity. You talk about Marlene and her being, seemingly bellicose and all of that. But as is indicated, one is not quite sure what would have been the cause of that. And it seems that Peter, as the story goes, had a certain kind of insight. I suppose I don't know whether it was based on superstition, because that's a possibility, but he thought that there was something wrong with her and that she was not her normal self. And I think, that's the kind of thread you see running through the thing, where in many instances people were not their normal selves, and things were happening, and sometimes things got out of control for them. And so, I mean, rather than sometimes coming outright and blaming them, you sometimes have to look with a little bit of sympathy and wonder what really could have inspired such behavior. And I think that could explain so many of the characters, including Dennis and Gregory and Bunny and all of these people, because at the end of the day, some of these were, I mean, very sympathetic figures. You might look at it from one way and say, well, they made major blunders, and in point of fact, they did, which had repercussions. But sometimes the backstory might suggest that these people weren't as villainous as one might think, or might not have been as vindictive as one might think, and so it is a matter of giving people an opportunity to make the assessment. I mean, Don Taylor, for example, could come across as a rogue, but at the same time, he had so many great qualities. I mean, he was so brilliant in terms of his negotiating skills and his knowledge of the music. Danny Sim, I mean, has one side to him, but there was the other side, which showed somebody who was very loyal and cared for the people who were around him and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, with all of these characters, there is, what I think the book does, rather than come down, I mean, definitively and pass a judgment, it provides evidence to say, well, these things happened. And I mean, people should draw their own conclusions as to why these things really happen. And do you think that these persons were acting on their own volition, whether the habits that they have might have caused them to stray? So it's a lot of things that you have to look at, and I think what the book does is, the other thing is, some of the issues that are there are not supposed to confront artists and their management today, because technology would have obviated a lot of those challenges. A GPS, a cell phone, all of those things. There are many stories there where people got lost. I mean, weren't able to reach shows because they got lost. Those things should not, and perhaps would not, happen today because of all of the amenities that we have at our disposal. So, but for the historical record, those things are very good, and there's still lessons. There are still lessons too, because even today you have artists who will have their cell phones and all of these gadgets, and they still don't answer them and they don't pay attention. So part of the thing also is for artists to learn from these things, because yes, you might have your cell phone and you have your GPS, but if you're not engaging with them and you lock them off and so on, you're going to have the same problems that these guys had 30 and 40 years ago. So I mean, those are, I mean, as I said, it's about lessons. That's what it is about. It is lessons from somebody who has amassed an enormous amount of experience being a participant observer, because here it was, he was observing all of this, but he was participating because he's part of that history. And that's what makes this book so riveting, because he is there in some of these stories. I mean, it's him and the protagonist, and not many other persons involved in the story. And so it's a special kind of insight that sometimes no other person has. And that's what makes a book special, because these things are singular in many respects. And that's what makes it a great book in my estimation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's not like many books written from the perspective of, I will talk to the people who experience this and then write the account. This is the person who experienced it telling his story.
It's first person.
Yeah, and
this is first person.
Rings so true. And as you said, Clyde, there's so much great, so many great lessons to be learned. And 30 years on, with all the advantages that we have today, yeah, we're still going to make mistakes, but there are some mistakes that just don't need to be made again because of the technological advantages that we have now. And so this book is just a great reminder of that. And it's a great reminder of, as I alluded to earlier, just so many opportunities that the music has had, that individual artists have had, and for whatever reasons, they just were not realized. Some were just, it just didn't work out. Some were sabotaged for whatever reasons that they did it. And in some cases, we were dealing with people who had some real problems in their life. It's not even, as you said, not even to judge them, but they were dealing with issues, be it drugs, be it something, else. And they couldn't always make the best decision for themselves. They couldn't always take advantage of what was placed before them. And that's very sad, but it's unfortunate that, that will always continue to exist. But I just think it's invaluable to be able to tell these stories, Copeland, because you lived all of this in all these different, this book spans the world, from stories in Africa, stories in Europe, right here in New York City, Jamaica, of course, just so many places. And it's just, wow, like the way it's told, you feel like you're right there in the room.
Exactly,
like,
exactly.
And I just love that about it. Like, you just can really picture, wow. And, I'm not going to give away some of the more dramatic scenes, but there are some really dramatic moments, and you're kind of on the edge of your seat, like, oh my God, like, what's going to happen next, and then somehow you just come out of it and it's all good. But there are some instances there where I thought, and I'm sure you especially thought, like, am I going to really make it out of this, but
yeah, it's so true. There are so many things, and sometimes I look back, and I have to give God thanks that he has blessed me with a memory bigger than an elephant. I have to call that, and I have to put a lot of big ups, and to my mom, because she was like the mother and the father, in our family of 12, and this book is dedicated in the memory of her, Lillian Forbes, the Cuba, and sorry about. So I feel happy about it, and that I could be able to tell some of the stories, because that is not even all the stories, Clyde can tell you we have dropped so many things because we didn't want it to look like a dishing on any particular person, so to speak. So you have to lighten it a little, and it has drawn a lot of interest, even from a special network who is interested in doing a documentary after the book is out, So I have to give thanks and to all the artists, musicians, entertainers, and everybody that I worked with, interacted with, because without them, I couldn't have completed a journey of so long, And I have to thank every one of them. And I tell you the truth, almost everybody is mentioned in the book. If your name is not in the book, it's because it slipped me. But round 2, it will be in it, because every single soul that I've interacted with and worked with and make a contribution in my journey, in my rise, is mentioned and thanked in the book. Because without them, as I said, I wouldn't be here to tell the stories. And thank God I was able to do that, and help some of the ones who are coming up, the young ones who need to learn, need to know. I ran into one of Joe Gibson last week in the plaza, and he said to me, I am the youngest of Joe Gibson, I hear you guys talking about Dennis Brown and Lloyd Parks, and I want to know how much you know them. And when I told him who I am, he almost fainted. So he knows so much about me, and he's to meet me right there, and he started telling me Jogi's got 10 children, and Jogi was this and that, and he said he's gonna sit with me one day, and we
Nice.
reminisce and go back there and so on. But it was a great journey and a great experience for me, and I must really thank Clyde, because apparently he didn't remember fully, is when I was doing my 40th anniversary in 2002, tour of the US first, when I came to get Tonto Metro and Devante, and Iman Big Mac was up there. Every evening I go up there to negotiate the deal with them. I keep telling a story, telling a story, and telling a story. And then they said, why you don't just put it in a book? So we actually really started from 2002. But, I get tied up running here and running here, doing this, doing that, but jotting down things as I going along. And then in the last couple of years, we said, let's put our heads together and get this thing out because time is running. And I remember saying to John Holt and Gregory, you should write your memoirs because we never know what can happen and so on. So when I say all of that, I just decided to just put my hands together. And I must thank Clyde, because he was a source of great inspiration, and helped, I sat down and write these stories night after night, and he edited them. If I repeat something here and there, he said, this is a repetitious one there and things. So it was a great collaboration between me and him. And we feel like we're just one big happy family, and, I have to thank him very much for guiding me and him. But, I have to give thanks, boy, to God for preserving me with this memory box that I can remember so many things. All these artists always come to me and say, when I tell them stories about them say, what? You're good enough because I never remember that and I never remember that and so on. Me and Freddie McGregor had a laugh 2 nights ago when we went back to the early days of touring with Reggae Superfest. And it's pure joke we get in when everything comes up. And you saw some of the stories in the book, so you should tell, that it's going to be a laughter and some serious moments, in it.
Right. Definitely. Well, Clyde, as we conclude, is there anything you would like to add about the book, your experience of helping to document Copeland's life and experiences?
Well, I'm glad I mean I'm very glad that I was able to be a part of this project, because I think it's a most significant one in terms of the development of Jamaican music, because one of the things that we haven't done a good job of is chronicling our experience in a way that others will be able to see what we have done. And I think from that standpoint, I think that's a very important contribution that Copeland has made. And I'm happy to have been a part of that. I mean, I'm also desirous of giving kudos to Joe, because again, Joe, as the man who's said, well, let's go, I thought that was great. I mean, and he has ventured now into book publishing. It's a new venture for him. I mean, I mean, I've been writing all along, but I mean, book publishing is a novel experience to me. I've never really published a book, and
Yeah.
so I mean, that was a great learning experience for me. And I mean, it's an intense one. It's very intense. It's labor intensive, because it's a lot of work. I mean, making sure the corrections are, even, you figure that you're through, and then, you go back and you see something and you say, no, let's move it that way, or let's put it over there and let's do this. So it's a lot of things. I think Copeland has been somebody who is very meticulous. So, I mean, he's very detailed. And so, when it comes to the whole design of the book, and in terms of the minutia, in terms of what really took place and everything had to, the dates and everything, he's very particular about those things. And he was constantly in the loop in terms of making those corrections, and making sure that things are historically accurate. So, I mean, I think it has been one of the great experiences of my life. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I want to salute Copeland, for this monumental work. And we look forward to great things. And thank you so much, Pat.
Oh, my pleasure. And I just would like the listeners to know when the book will be available. Will it be ready the end of July, ready in time for Reggae Sumfest, perhaps to purchase on site? When can people look to purchase the book?
Intention is, yes, it should be ready by Reggae Sumfest, because of course that's affiliated, that's Joe's
Joe.
festival, and it's his publication. So I mean, that's a nice synergy. So we are moving towards that. So that is definitely, and then we'll have it in Benicassim also, for the Rotterdam. But yeah, the move is that certainly we will have it we'll certainly have it by the end of July. But the intention is that it will be at Reggae Sumfest.
Okay, and then when will
I have to
Amazon?
Huh?
Soon after, will it be available on Amazon?
No, yes, it will be available on Amazon and all the leading bookstores and all of that.
Great,
yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to, before closing, I want to really extend a big thank you to Down Sound and their staff, Joe Bogdanovich and his magnificent staff, for taking up the challenge of having my book bearing the first imprint of Down Sound Music Publishing. And I feel honored and privileged that I was given that opportunity. And I can tell you, as Clive said, Joe is happy about it, being the first book in that new venture. And he's very excited. He wants to see it out. And, now that he has some affiliation and the word is out that he's going to acquire Rogers archives, to be put in a historic place. I'm sure mine's going to be there too, and some of my paraphernalias and all the artifacts that I've gathered over the years. So it's a good family affair, associated with Down Sound Entertainment. And I must thank Joe and his magnificent staff, scatter everybody, for the work you have put in. And we have a lot of work to do ahead of us because big things are going to happen down the road.
Well, thank you both so much. It's a pleasure talking with you again, and we wish you the best with the book. Reggae My Life Is. We've been speaking to Copeland Forbes and Clyde McKenzie. Check out the book on Down Sound Books, courtesy of Down Sound Books. If you'll be in Jamaica at Reggae Sumfest, you can purchase it there. If you'll be at Spain at the Rotterdam Reggae Festival in Benicassim, you can also purchase it there and hear another chat with Clyde and Copeland and see the great showcase with the revolutionaries. But everyone else, Amazon and all the other book sellers around the US. So thank you all for joining us for our International Reggae Day presentation with Copeland Forbes and Clyde McKenzie. On behalf of TropicalFete, I'm Pat Meschino, and it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And